The diner smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours straight, and the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with the same relentless frequency as the headache pounding behind my eyes. My sneakers, 2 sizes too big, inherited from the donation bin at St. Mary's, squeaked against the cracked linoleum as I made my way between tables, refilling cups that never seemed to empty. "More coffee, honey?" I asked the truck driver at table 6, forcing my lips into something resembling a smile. He grunted, didn't look up from his phone. I poured anyway. The steam rose between us like a ghost, and for a moment, I wondered if I was becoming one too, invisible, insubstantial. Just another shadow in this grease-stained corner of the city. It was nearly midnight when the black SUVs pulled up outside. I noticed them through the smudged window, 3 vehicles moving in perfect synchronization, their tinted windows reflecting the neon sign that flickered Rosie's Diner in pink and blue. They stopped with military precision, blocking the entrance, and something cold slithered down my spine. Nobody in this neighborhood drove cars like that. Not legally, anyway. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that felt wrong, discordant with the sudden tension that flooded the room. The truck driver looked up. Old Mr. Chen, nursing his usual bowl of soup in the corner, went very still. Even Rosie, who'd seen everything in her 40 years running this place, stopped mid-wipe of the counter, her weathered hand frozen against the formica. They came in like a storm front. 4 men in dark suits, moving with the kind of fluid coordination that spoke of training, of violence held carefully in check. They scanned the room with eyes that missed nothing, lingered on exits, assessed threats. My pulse kicked up, rabbit quick against my throat. Then he walked in. I'd never believed in presence before. Not really. I'd thought it was something romance novels made up, that indefinable quality that made someone command attention just by existing. But I believed it now. He was young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead in a way that seemed both careless and deliberate. His suit probably cost more than I made in 6 months, charcoal gray with a subtle sheen that caught the awful fluorescent light, and somehow made it beautiful. He moved like water, like silk, like something dangerous pretending to be civilized. But it was his eyes that trapped me. Dark, almost black, they swept the diner with the same calculated assessment his security had performed. When they landed on me, I forgot how to breathe. There was intelligence there, and something else. Something that looked like hunger, though not for food. He studied me the way a jeweler might study a diamond, looking for flaws, for value, for something hidden beneath the surface. "Table for 1, he said, and his voice was velvet over steel, accented with something European I couldn't quite place. My mouth had gone dry. "Anywhere you like." He chose the booth in the back corner, the one with clear sightlines to both exits, I noticed with a chill. His guards fanned out, 2 by the door, 2 flanking his table at a discreet distance. One of them, a mountain of a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, pulled out a small device and began sweeping the booth. Looking for bugs, I realized. For listening devices. What kind of man needs his diner booth checked for surveillance equipment? I grabbed a menu with shaking hands, nearly dropped it, caught it against my chest. The plastic was sticky with old syrup, and I was suddenly, painfully aware of how I must look. My uniform stained with coffee and ketchup, my hair escaping its messy bun in wispy tendrils, my face probably shiny with exhaustion and cheap foundation. "Water," he said, before I could offer him the menu. "And whatever you recommend. The meatloaf's good," I managed, hating how my voice wavered. "And the apple pie is homemade." Something flickered in those dark eyes. "Amusement?" "Then I'll have both." I nodded, started to turn away, but his next words stopped me cold. "What's your name?" I shouldn't have told him. Every instinct I had screamed that giving this man even the smallest piece of information about myself was dangerous. But those eyes held me pinned like a butterfly to cork, and my mouth moved before my brain could catch up. "Emma," I whispered. "Emma." He repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. I know who you are." The words escaped before I could stop them, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His guards shifted, hands moving to weapons I couldn't see but knew were there. Even he went very still, and I realized I'd just made a terrible, possibly fatal mistake. Do you? His voice was softer now, which somehow made it more frightening. I swallowed hard. I mean, I don't. I just meant, you look important, successful. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it was better than the truth. That I'd seen his face on the news 3 months ago, when the district attorney had tried and failed to indict him for racketeering. Dominic Salvatore, the youngest head of the Salvatore family in 3 generations. A man who controlled half the city's underground from the shadows, who'd never spent a single night in jail despite decades of criminal enterprise. A man who had people disappeared. He studied me for a long moment, and I was certain he could see through my pathetic attempt at deception. But then that almost smile returned to his lips, and he waved a hand dismissively. His guards relaxed fractionally. "Just Emma the waitress," he murmured, almost to himself. "Bring me dinner, Emma. And join me while I eat." It wasn't a request. I fled to the kitchen on legs that felt like water, my hands trembling so badly I could barely pin the order ticket to the line. Rosie grabbed my wrist, her fingers like iron despite her age. "You stay away from that man," she hissed, her eyes wide with fear I'd never seen before. "You hear me? Nothing good comes from his kind of attention." But I didn't have a choice, did I? You didn't say no to Dominic Salvatore. I brought him his meatloaf, his water, his pie. Set them down with as much grace as I could muster, which wasn't much. My hands still shook, making the plates rattle slightly against the table. "Sit," he commanded softly, gesturing to the seat across from him. I sat. He didn't eat immediately. Instead, he continued to watch me with those fathomless eyes, and I felt like a specimen under glass. Every flaw and weakness exposed to his scrutiny. "You're afraid of me," he observed, cutting into his meatloaf with precise, economical movements. "No," I lied. "Yes." He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "Good. Fear is sensible. Fear keeps you alive." He paused, swallowed. "But you're still sitting here. Because you told me to," I thought, but didn't say. Instead, I watched him eat. Watched the way his jaw moved, the way his long fingers handled the fork with almost feminine grace. There was something hypnotic about it, about him. Something that made me forget, just for a moment, how dangerous this situation was. "Why this place?" I asked before I could stop myself. "There are better restaurants, places more suitable." Suitable. He repeated the word like it amused him. "You think I don't belong here? I think your suit costs more than Rosie's paid rent in 5 years." That earned me a real smile, brief but genuine, and it transformed his face entirely. For just a second, he looked younger, less like a predator, and more like a man. "I came here," he said, setting down his fork, "because 3 weeks ago, someone tried to kill me. My blood turned to ice. It was well planned," he continued, his voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Professional. They knew my route, my schedule, my security protocols. They hit my car with an RPG 2 blocks from here. I remembered that. The explosion that had rocked the neighborhood at 2 a.m, the flames that had lit up the sky. The news had called it a gas main rupture. My driver died instantly," Dominic said, and something flickered across his face. Grief, maybe, or rage carefully controlled 2 of my men. The car flipped. I was trapped inside and the fuel tank was leaking. They came to finish the job, 3 men with guns, walking through the fire like demons. His eyes found mine again, and I couldn't look away. And then you appeared. My breath caught. Don't lie to me, Emma." His voice dropped lower, intimate and threatening all at once. "I've spent 3 weeks searching for you. 3 weeks asking questions, following leads, until someone finally remembered. The girl from the diner? The one who always works late? The one who ran toward the burning car instead of away from it? Oh, God." The memory came flooding back, the explosion that had shaken the diner's windows, how I'd run outside without thinking, seen the overturned vehicle engulfed in flames, heard the screaming from inside. I'd grabbed the fire extinguisher from behind the counter, sprayed the door until I could wrench it open, pulled the man inside to safety before the secondary explosion turned the car into a fireball. I'd thought he was unconscious, hadn't realized those dark eyes had been watching me the whole time, memorizing my face through the smoke and blood. "That was you," I whispered. "That was me." He leaned forward, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne, smoke, something darker underneath. "You saved my life, Emma. Do you understand what that means?" I shook my head, mute. "It means I owe you a debt." His hand moved across the table, long fingers wrapping around my wrist with surprising gentleness. His touch was warm, almost hot, and I felt it like an electric current running up my arm. "And I always pay my debts. You don't owe me anything," I managed, trying to pull away. His grip tightened fractionally. Not painful, but unbreakable. Anyone would have done the same, but they didn't. "You did." His thumb brushed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. "Tell me, Emma, what do you want? Money? A new car? A house? Name it, and it's yours." I wanted to tell him I wanted nothing, that I wanted him to leave, to forget I existed, to take his dangerous presence and his dark eyes and his impossible offer somewhere far away from me. But then I made my mistake. "My landlord's tripling my rent next month," I heard myself say, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I have a daughter. We're going to be evicted. I work 3 jobs, and it's still not enough. And I broke off, horrified at myself. Why was I telling him this? What was wrong with me? Something changed in his expression. His eyes darkened further. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You have a daughter." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, trying again to pull my wrist free. This time he let me go, but his gaze followed my hand as I cradled it against my chest. "How old?" 3, almost 4. "And her father?" The question was casual, but there was nothing casual about the intensity in his eyes. "Not in the picture," I said shortly. He sat back, and I watched as he processed this information, filing it away in whatever mental database he kept on people who interested him. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a business card, heavy cream stock with only a phone number embossed in black. "Call this number tomorrow," he said, sliding it across the table. "My people will take care of your landlord situation. They'll ensure you and your daughter have a safe place to live." I stared at the card like it was a snake. "I can't accept that. You already saved my life, Emma. This is the least I can do." "Nothing's free," I said, meeting his eyes. "What do you want in return?" That smile again, sharp and predatory. "Smart girl. I want you to have dinner with me, tomorrow night. Somewhere better than this." Every warning bell in my head was screaming. "I can't. My daughter will be looked after by the finest nanny in the city, carefully vetted and completely trustworthy." He stood, and his men immediately moved into formation. 7 o'clock. A car will pick you up. And if I say no? He paused, looked back at me over his shoulder. In the harsh, fluorescent light, his face was half in shadow, and he looked like something from a fairy tale, the beautiful prince who was really a monster in disguise. "Then I'll respect your choice," he said quietly. "But your debt to me will remain unpaid, and I'll have to find another way to show my gratitude. One that you might find more intrusive." It was a threat wrapped in silk, and we both knew it. He left as he'd arrived, a storm moving through and leaving destruction in its wake. The SUVs pulled away in perfect synchronization, and the diners seemed to exhale collectively. I looked down at the business card in my shaking hand, at the single phone number that felt like a life sentence. What had I done? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the narrow bed I shared with Lily, watching the shadows from passing headlights crawl across our water-stained ceiling, and replayed every second of that encounter. His voice, his eyes, the way his fingers had felt against my wrist, a touch that was somehow both a caress and a manacle. The business card sat on the milk crate that served as my nightstand, gleaming white in the darkness like a tiny moon, or a surrender flag. Lily stirred beside me, her small body curled into mine, her breath sweet and even against my shoulder. She'd kicked off her blanket again, and I pulled it back over her gently, my heart clenching at how thin she'd gotten. The stomach bug from last month had taken weight she couldn't afford to lose, and the doctor bills had eaten through my meager savings like acid. I had $47 in my bank account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. The new amount, the impossible amount. $3,000 for this shoebox apartment with its leaking pipes and broken heating and cockroaches that came out when the lights went off. I couldn't afford to say no to Dominic Salvatore, but I couldn't afford to say yes either. By morning, I'd convinced myself I wouldn't call. I'd find another way. Pick up extra shifts, sell plasma, maybe finally pawn my mother's wedding ring like I'd been threatening to do for months. There had to be options that didn't involve dinner with a man who had people killed. But when I dropped Lily off at Mrs. Chen's apartment, our elderly neighbor who watched her for almost nothing because she was lonely, and Lily made her smile. The old woman took one look at my face and shook her head. "You have that look," she said in her heavily accented English. My daughter had that look before she married her husband, the look of a woman walking toward trouble. "I'm not walking toward anything," I protested weakly. Mrs. Chen didn't believe me, neither did I. My morning shift at the diner crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every time the bell chimed, I looked up expecting to see those dark suits, those calculating eyes, but they never came. By noon, I'd almost convinced myself it had been a fever dream, some exhaustion-induced hallucination. Then Rosie called me into her office. Office was generous. It was really just a closet with a desk and a filing cabinet that hadn't closed properly since 1987. Rosie sat in her creaking chair, her face grave, and gestured for me to shut the door. "That man last night," she began without preamble. "You know who he is?" I nodded slowly. "Then you know you need to stay away from him." She leaned forward, her weathered hands clasped on the desk. "I've lived in this city 63 years, Emma. I've seen men like that come and go. They're poison. Everything they touch dies. He said he wants to help," I heard myself say. "With my rent situation." Rosie's eyes went wide with horror. "No, absolutely not. You don't take money from the Salvatores. You don't take anything from them. That family—" She broke off, seemed to be struggling with herself. 20 years ago, my nephew got involved with them. Small stuff at first, running errands, delivering packages, then bigger things. Then one day he just disappeared. No body, no explanation, just gone. Ice water in my veins. "Rosie. They found him 6 months later. What was left of him?" Her voice had gone flat, dead. "He'd tried to skim money. Not much, $200. They made an example." The closet felt smaller suddenly, airless. I thought of Lily's face, her gap-toothed smile, the way she called me Mama in her sleep. "I won't call him," I said. Rosie studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "You're lying." "To me or to yourself, I don't know. But Emma," she reached across the desk, gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Whatever he's offering, it's not worth the price. Nothing ever is." I worked my second job in a daze. 4 hours of cleaning offices in a downtown high-rise, my knees aching as I scrubbed toilets and emptied trash cans for people who never even looked at me. Invisible again. Safe in my invisibility. By the time I picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's, my whole body hurt, and my mind had gone numb with exhaustion. We ate dinner, ramen again, dressed up with an egg and some frozen vegetables to make it seem like real food, and she chattered about her day, about the cartoon she'd watched, about the cat she'd seen in the window. "Mama, can we get a kitty?" she asked, her eyes huge and hopeful. "Maybe someday, baby. When we're rich?" I forced a smile. "When we're rich?" After I put her to bed, I stood in our tiny bathroom and stared at myself in the cracked mirror. 26 years old, but I looked older. Exhaustion had carved lines around my eyes. Worry had settled into my forehead. My hair needed cutting. My roots needed touching up. My reflection looked like exactly what I was. A woman drowning by inches, too proud to scream for help. The business card was still on the milk crate. I picked it up with shaking hands. The number rang 3 times before a woman answered, her voice crisp and professional. Salvatore residence. My mouth went dry. I almost hung up. "This is Emma," I whispered. "From the diner." He said to call. "One moment, please, Miss Emma." The hold music was classical. Vivaldi, I thought, though I wasn't sure. I paced our tiny living room, 3 steps one way, 3 steps back, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Emma." His voice, smooth as whiskey, sent electricity down my spine. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't call." "I almost didn't, but you did." I could hear the smile in his voice. "The car will be at your address at 6:30 tomorrow evening. Wear something comfortable." "I don't have your address," I said, confused. "How do you—" "I know where you live, Emma. I know everything about you." The words should have terrified me. They did terrify me, but underneath the fear was something else. Something I didn't want to examine too closely. A part of me that found his obsessive attention thrilling in a way that made me hate myself. "The nanny will arrive at 6, he continued. "Her name is Maria. She's worked with children for 15 years and has impeccable references. She'll stay until you return." "I haven't agreed to this. Haven't you?" A pause, weighted with meaning. "Sleep well, Emma. Tomorrow night we'll discuss your future." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding the phone, staring at nothing, feeling the trap close around me with the inexorable certainty of fate. The next day passed in a blur of anxiety. I worked my morning shift on autopilot, jumped at shadows, snapped at customers who didn't deserve it. By the time I got home, I was wound so tight, I thought I might shatter. At precisely 6 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. The woman who stood in the hallway looked like everyone's fantasy grandmother. Short, plump, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore sensible shoes and carried a bag that looked like Mary Poppins's carpet bag. "Miss Emma? I'm Maria." Her smile was genuine, warm. "Mr. Salvatore sent me to look after your daughter this evening." "Mama?" Lily appeared at my side, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Who's that?" "This is Maria," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "She's going to stay with you tonight while Mama goes out." "Where are you going?" "Good question." "To dinner, with a friend." Maria knelt down to Lily's level, her movements practiced and gentle. "What's your rabbit's name, sweetheart?" "Mr. Hoppy." What a wonderful name. Does Mr. Hoppy like stories? I brought some books. Within 5 minutes, Maria had won Lily over completely. I watched them settle onto our threadbare couch, a picture book spread between them, and felt something in my chest crack open. When was the last time someone had helped me? When was the last time I hadn't had to do everything alone? "Miss Emma?" Maria looked up, her eyes knowing. "Go get ready. We'll be fine here." I retreated to the bathroom, stared at my meager collection of clothes hanging from the shower rod. Nothing suitable for wherever we were going. The nicest thing I owned was a black dress I'd bought from Goodwill 3 years ago for a funeral. It would have to do. I showered quickly. The water never got quite hot enough, and did my best with the limited makeup I owned. Mascara, a little blush, lip gloss that had probably expired months ago. My hands shook as I tried to line my eyes. Gave up after the 3rd attempt left me looking like a raccoon. The dress fit differently than I remembered. Tighter across the ribs, I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. I brushed my hair until it shone, left it down because I didn't have time for anything elaborate. At 6:25, I kissed Lily goodbye, ignored her questions about where Mama was going and when she'd be back, and stood by the window watching the street below. The car arrived at exactly 6:30. It was a black Mercedes, sleek and predatory, with windows so darkly tinted I couldn't see inside. The driver emerged, a mountain of a man in a dark suit. The same one who'd been at the diner, the one with the scarred eyebrow. He opened the back door and stood waiting, patient as a statue. I took the stairs down, my cheap heels clicking against concrete, my stomach in knots. The evening air was cool against my bare arms, raising goosebumps, and I wrapped them around myself as I approached the car. "Miss Emma," the driver said, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a large man. "I'm Marcus. Mr. Salvatore asked me to ensure your comfort this evening." "Thank you," I whispered. The interior of the car was more luxurious than any space I'd ever occupied. Leather seats that smelled expensive, climate control that actually worked, a mini bar with crystal glasses that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I sat rigidly, afraid to touch anything, afraid to breathe too heavily and disturb the perfection. We drove for 20 minutes, moving from my neighborhood's cracked streets and graffitied walls into areas I'd only seen on television. The buildings grew taller, cleaner. The people on the sidewalks looked different, confident, purposeful, expensive. This was where money lived, where power resided. The restaurant had no sign. We pulled up to an unmarked building with a single door flanked by 2 more men in dark suits. Marcus opened my door, offered his hand to help me out. I took it, grateful for the support, because my legs had turned to jelly. "Mr. Salvatore is waiting inside," Marcus said. "I'll be here when you're ready to leave." The promise of escape? Or a warning that I couldn't leave without permission? The door opened before I could knock, revealing a space that took my breath away. This wasn't a restaurant. It was something else entirely. Intimate, exclusive, with only a handful of tables draped in white linen and topped with candles that cast dancing shadows. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it like captured stars. The air smelled of roses and something savory that made my empty stomach clench with hunger. But the space was empty, except for one occupied table. Dominic stood as I entered, and my breath caught all over again. He wore a different suit tonight, midnight blue that somehow made his dark eyes even more intense. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered, and I caught his scent again. Expensive cologne, and something underneath that was just him, masculine and dangerous and intoxicating. "Emma." He said my name like a prayer. "You came." Did I have a choice? That smile, sharp and knowing. There's always a choice. He moved around the table, offered his hand. "But I'm grateful you made this one." His hand was warm, his grip firm as he led me to the table, pulled out my chair with old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with everything I knew about him. When he settled across from me, the candlelight caught in his eyes, turning them almost amber. "You look beautiful," he said simply. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "I look like exactly what I am. A waitress in a thrift store dress, completely out of her depth." "You look," he countered, his eyes never leaving mine, "like a woman who fights every day to protect what she loves. Like someone who runs toward burning cars instead of away from them. There's nothing more beautiful than that kind of courage." I didn't know what to say. Words had abandoned me. A server appeared, silent, efficient, and placed plates in front of us. Food that looked like art, delicate arrangements of color and texture that I was almost afraid to disturb. Wine appeared in my glass, ruby red and probably older than I was. "Eat," Dominic said gently. "You're too thin." "I'm fine." "You're starving yourself to feed your daughter." It wasn't a question. "How long since you had a real meal, Emma?" I picked up my fork to avoid answering, took a bite of something that melted on my tongue like butter and dreams. It was so good I almost cried. We ate in silence for a while, and I was acutely aware of his eyes on me, studying, analyzing, cataloging every movement. It should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, it made me feel visible in a way I hadn't been in years. "Tell me about her," he said finally. "Your daughter." "Why?" "Because she matters to you. Therefore, she matters to me." The logic was simple, terrifying. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone despite the incredible food. "Her name is Lily," I said quietly. "She's 3, almost 4. She loves strawberries and hates broccoli. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, even though she's not entirely sure what that means. She's smart, funny, stubborn as hell. She's everything good about me without any of the broken parts. And her father." The question landed like a blow. I reached for my wine, took a long drink to buy time. The liquid courage burned down my throat. He left when I told him I was pregnant. Haven't seen him since. His name. There was steel under the silk now, and I recognized the shift for what it was, the predator emerging from beneath the gentleman's veneer. It doesn't matter. He's gone. It matters to me. Dominic leaned forward, and the candlelight made shadows dance across his face. "Anyone who abandons their child, who leaves you to struggle alone. They matter to me, Emma, very much. Why? I demanded, frustration and fear making me brave. Why do you care? You don't know me. One good deed doesn't make us friends, doesn't give you the right to. You saved my life. The words fell like stones into still water. In my world, he continued softly, that creates a bond, a responsibility. You became mine the moment you pulled me from that car, whether you wanted to or not, became mine. The words sent ice and fire through my veins in equal measure. I don't belong to anyone, I said, but my voice shook. Don't you? He reached across the table, his fingers finding mine before I could pull away. Then why are you here, Emma? Why did you call? Why did you say yes? Because I'm desperate. Because I'm drowning. Because some part of me wants to believe that someone powerful will save me for once, instead of me always having to save myself. But I couldn't say any of that. Instead, I pulled my hand back, wrapped my arms around myself. You said we'd discuss my future, I managed. So, discuss it. What do you want from me? Dominic sat back, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I want to take care of you, you and your daughter. I want to give you a life where you don't work yourself to death for pennies, where your child doesn't go hungry, where you don't have to choose between rent and medicine. And in exchange? In exchange, he said, his eyes boring into mine. You let me. It was too simple, too easy. There had to be more. That's it? You just provide for us out of the goodness of your heart? I never claimed to have a good heart, Emma. His smile was dark, dangerous. I'm a selfish man. I want you where I can see you, where I know you're safe. I want to watch Lily grow up healthy and happy. I want to be the one you call when you're in trouble, the one you turn to when you need anything at all. You want to own me. I want to protect you. There's a difference. Is there? We stared at each other across the candlelit table, and I felt the world tilting beneath me. Everything I'd believed about safety and independence sliding away like sand. I'll be honest with you, Dominic said finally. I'm not a good man. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things before I die. But I take care of what's mine, Emma. I protect it. Ferociously. And from the moment you pulled me out of that fire, you became mine to protect. I don't want to be owned, I whispered. Then consider it a partnership. He pulled something from his pocket, a key on a simple chain. I have a property, a house in a good neighborhood, safe, with a yard for Lily to play in. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, security system. It's yours. No strings, no rent, no expectations beyond letting me ensure you're both cared for. The key gleamed in the candlelight, promising everything I'd ever wanted and nothing I could afford. There are always strings, I said. Only the ones you tie yourself. He slid the key across the table. Take it. Visit the house tomorrow. If you hate it, walk away. I won't stop you. My hand moved toward the key before my brain could stop it. The metal was warm from his pocket, from his body heat. It felt like holding fire. Why me? I asked desperately. You could have anyone. Why are you doing this? For the first time since I'd met him, Dominic's carefully controlled expression cracked. Something raw and hungry flashed across his face, because when I was trapped in that car, watching the flames get closer, certain I was going to die, you ran toward me. Not away. Toward. His voice had gone rough. Do you have any idea how rare that is? In my world, everyone runs away. Everyone takes, uses, betrays. But you gave without expecting anything in return. You risked your life for a stranger. Anyone would have... No, the word was sharp. Final. They wouldn't. They didn't. You did, and now I can't stop thinking about you, Emma. Can't stop wondering what kind of woman runs into fire. What kind of mother works 3 jobs and still smiles at her daughter? What kind of person survives in this city without becoming hard and cold and cruel? He stood abruptly, and I flinched. But he only moved to the window, staring out at the glittering city below. You're everything I'm not, he said quietly. Everything I can never be, and I want... He broke off, his shoulders tense. I want to keep that light safe. Is that so wrong? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. The key was still in my hand, warm and heavy as a promise, or a chain. The house was in a neighborhood I'd only ever driven through on my way to other places, the kind of area where children played on manicured lawns and nobody barred their windows. Tree-lined streets, flowers in window boxes, the kind of normal I'd stopped believing existed for people like me. Marcus drove us there the next morning, Lily bouncing in her car seat beside me, her excitement palpable. She'd never been in a car this nice, never seen streets this clean. Her face was pressed to the window, her breath fogging the glass as she pointed at everything. Mama, look! That dog is bigger than me. I see it, baby. And that house has a red door. Can we have a red door? My throat was too tight to answer. The house Dominic had given me, given as if it were nothing, as if homes didn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, was cream-colored with dark green shutters. 2 stories. A porch with actual furniture on it. A yard with grass that looked real, not painted. Wind chimes hanging by the door tinkled gently in the breeze. It looked like a postcard, like a dream. Marcus opened my door, then carefully unbuckled Lily from her seat. She took my hand, suddenly shy in the face of all this perfection. Is this ours, Mama? She whispered. I don't know yet, baby. But I was lying. The moment I'd seen it, I'd known that I couldn't walk away from this, couldn't condemn Lily to another year in that roach-infested shoebox when safety and comfort waited behind that glossy black door. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside was even worse, or better. I couldn't tell anymore. Hardwood floors gleamed under the morning light streaming through pristine windows. The furniture was simple but elegant. A couch that looked like it had never been sat on, a dining table with 6 chairs, built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled. The kitchen had granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that practically sparkled. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms, one clearly meant for a child, with soft pink walls and a bed shaped like a castle. Lily shrieked with delight and ran to it, climbing up the little ladder to the turret. Mama! Mama, I'm a princess! I stood in the doorway, my vision blurring with tears I couldn't afford to shed. The master bedroom has an ensuite bathroom, Marcus said from behind me, his voice carefully neutral. Mr. Salvatore had it stocked with essentials. Towels, linens, toiletries. There's food in the kitchen. Nothing fancy. Just basics to get you started. The security system is already installed and monitored 24 hours. You and Miss Lily will be safe here. Safe. Such a small word for such an enormous concept. What does he want? I asked, not turning around. Really? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Permission, Miss Emma. He wants permission to care for you. In my 10 years working for Mr. Salvatore, I've never seen him like this. He's different with you. Different how? Careful, like you're something precious that might break. I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. I'm already broken. Then maybe he wants to help put you back together. I finally turned to look at him, this enormous man with his scar and his gentle eyes. And what happens when he gets bored? When the novelty wears off and he realizes I'm just a waitress with stretch marks and debt? Mr. Salvatore doesn't get bored, Marcus said simply. When he commits to something, he's loyal unto death. It's one of his better qualities, implying there were worse ones. Many worse ones. But I'd already made my choice, hadn't I? The moment I'd accepted the key, the moment I'd let Marcus drive us here, the moment I'd watched Lily's face light up at the sight of that princess bed. I'd sold my soul for my daughter's happiness. Or maybe I'd just finally accepted help from the only person who'd ever offered it. We moved in that afternoon. It didn't take long. We owned almost nothing. Our clothes fit in 2 garbage bags. Lily's toys filled a single box. Everything we'd accumulated in 26 years of my life could be loaded into Marcus's trunk with room to spare. Mrs. Chen cried when I told her we were leaving. You be careful, she said, gripping my hands with her papery fingers. You be smart. Men like that, they don't give without taking. I know. Do you? Her eyes were fierce. My daughter knew too. She still married him. She still... She broke off, shook her head. Just remember, you can always come back. My door is always open. But I knew I wouldn't go back, couldn't go back. Not to that apartment, that life, that grinding poverty that had been slowly killing me by inches. That first night in the new house, I lay in a bed that felt too big, too soft, staring at a ceiling that didn't leak. Down the hall, Lily slept in her castle bed, her breathing deep and even, more peaceful than I'd heard it in months. The silence was so complete it was almost frightening. No sirens, no shouting neighbors, no gunshots in the distance. Just quiet. Just safety. Just a golden cage I'd walked into willingly. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. Are you comfortable? My fingers trembled as I typed back. How did you get this number? I told you. I know everything about you. I should have been angry, should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something else, something warm and dangerous that curled in my stomach like smoke. We're fine. Thank you. Just fine? I looked around the bedroom, at the expensive linens, the soft carpet, the window that overlooked a garden instead of a dumpster. Thought about Lily sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Better than fine. Good. Sleep well, Emma. I'll see you soon. I stared at that last sentence for a long time before turning off my phone. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange dreamlike state. I kept working at the diner, partly because I needed to, partly because quitting would make everything too real. But now I came home to warmth and light instead of cold and darkness. Lily started at a new preschool. One with actual teachers and art supplies, and a playground that wasn't made of rust and tetanus. She made friends. She laughed more, and Dominic was everywhere, not physically. I didn't see him again after that dinner. But his presence permeated everything. Fresh flowers appeared on the porch every Monday. The refrigerator mysteriously restocked itself. When my car died, my ancient wheezing disaster on wheels, a new one appeared in the driveway the next morning. Keys in the mailbox with a note. You need something reliable. It was too much. It wasn't enough. I didn't know what I felt anymore. Then, on a Thursday evening 3 weeks after we'd moved in, there was a knock at the door. I opened it expecting Marcus, or maybe a delivery person. It was Dominic. He stood on my porch in jeans and a simple black sweater, looking somehow more dangerous in casual clothes than he had in his expensive suits. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. And there was something in his expression that looked almost uncertain. I should have called, he said. Yes. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. You should have. Can I come in? I stepped aside, because what else could I do? This was his house, his gift, his trap. I was just living in it. He moved past me, and I caught his scent again. Smoke and expensive cologne, and something darker that made my mouth go dry. He stopped in the living room, looking around as if seeing it for the first time, though I knew he must have been the one to furnish it. Where's Lily? Asleep. It's past her bedtime. He nodded, turned to face me. We stood there in the soft lamplight, the space between us charged with something I didn't want to name. I've been giving you space, he said finally, letting you adjust, but I can't. He broke off, ran a hand through his hair. I need to see you, Emma. Need to know you're real, that this is real. This? You. Here, safe. He took a step closer, and I fought the urge to back away. Do you have any idea what it does to me, knowing you're sleeping under a roof I provided, that your daughter is happy because of something I did? It's not healthy, I whispered. This obsession. I know. Another step. I don't care. You should. Why? He was close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating off him, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Give me one good reason why I should stop wanting you. Because I'm nobody. Because this can't last. Because you're afraid. His hand came up, and I froze as his fingers traced the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness. Because you've been hurt before, abandoned before, and you're waiting for me to do the same. Won't you? My voice broke. Eventually, no. The word was absolute, final. I'm many things, Emma. A criminal, a killer, a man who's damned himself 1,000 times over. But I'm loyal to what's mine, and you're mine. I never agreed to that. Your body did. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I gasped despite myself. Every time you shiver when I'm near. Every time your pulse jumps when I touch you. Every time you look at me like you're not sure if you want me to leave or stay. I want you to leave, I lied. He smiled. That dangerous, knowing smile. Liar. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was possession. Claiming. The storm that had been building between us since that first night in the diner finally breaking. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head back as his mouth moved over mine with practiced skill that made my knees weak. I should have pushed him away, should have reminded him that I didn't want this, didn't want him. But my hands were fisting in his sweater, pulling him closer, and I was kissing him back like a woman drowning, like he was air, and I'd been suffocating for years. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard, and his eyes had gone nearly black. "Tell me to leave," he said roughly. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll go. I'll never touch you again." I opened my mouth. The words should have been easy, but what came out was, "Stay." He stayed. Not in my bed. Not that night. Instead, we sat on the couch in the living room, the space between us carefully maintained, and talked until the sky began to lighten outside the windows. He told me about growing up in his world, where loyalty was currency and weakness was death. About inheriting his father's empire at 25 when a rival family's bullet found its mark. About the weight of being responsible for hundreds of lives, legitimate and otherwise. I told him about Lily's father, Ryan, a bartender with a pretty smile and prettier promises, how he'd sworn he loved me, wanted a family, a future. How those promises had evaporated the moment I'd shown him the positive pregnancy test. How I'd searched for him for months before accepting he was gone, and I was alone. "His name is Ryan Foster," Dominic said, his voice carefully neutral. "He works at a bar in Portland now, married, 2 kids. I stared at him. "How do you—" "I told you. I know everything about you." His eyes met mine, and there was something cold in them now. "Do you want me to—" "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I don't want anything from him. He made his choice. He abandoned his child, and you kill people." I don't know what made me say it, exhaustion maybe, or the strange intimacy of the early morning hours. So, maybe we're all just doing the best we can with the darkness inside us. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled. A real smile, not the dangerous one. "You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm tired." "You're extraordinary and tired." He stood, and I felt the loss of his presence like a physical thing. "Get some sleep, Emma. I'll let myself out." He was halfway to the door when I called out, "Dominic?" He turned. "Thank you, for all of this, for—" I gestured helplessly at the house, the safety, the impossible gift he'd given us, everything. "Thank me by accepting it," he said quietly, "by letting yourself be cared for without waiting for the other shoe to drop." Then he was gone, and I was alone with the dawn and the terrifying realization that I was falling for a man who dealt in death and called it business. The next week, everything changed. It started small. A car that followed me to work, black sedan with tinted windows that stayed 3 cars back but never quite disappeared. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then the phone calls started, hang-ups that came at odd hours. A feeling of being watched that crawled across my skin like spiders. I didn't tell Dominic, didn't want to seem weak or crazy, or like I was manufacturing drama to keep his attention. But Marcus noticed. Of course he noticed. Security was his job, and he was very good at it. "How long?" he asked one morning, his eyes scanning the street as he walked me to my car. "How long what?" "How long have they been watching you?" My blood ran cold. "I don't—" "Miss Emma." His voice was gentle but firm. "I need you to be honest with me. Your safety and Miss Lily's safety depend on it." So I told him. About the car, the calls, the feeling of eyes on me everywhere I went. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing progressively darker. "I need to make a call," he said when I finished. "Marcus, please don't—" but he was already dialing, and from the way he straightened to attention, I knew who he was calling. 10 minutes later, 3 more SUVs appeared. Men in dark suits flooded the street, efficient and terrifying. And then Dominic's car pulled up. And he emerged like an avenging angel, his face a mask of cold fury that made my stomach clench with fear. Not fear of him. Fear for whoever had been stupid enough to threaten what he considered his. "Inside," he said, his hand on my lower back, propelling me toward the house. "Now." I went, because that voice allowed no argument. Lily was at preschool. Thank God she was at preschool. And the house suddenly felt like what it really was, a fortress preparing for war. Dominic stood in my living room, his phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. His free hand was clenched into a fist, and I could see the tension radiating off him in waves. When he finally hung up, he turned to me with eyes that had gone almost black. "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to bother you with, bother me?" The words came out harsh, explosive. "Someone is stalking you, threatening you, and you didn't think I'd want to know? I wasn't sure it was real. I thought maybe I was just what? Paranoid?" He crossed to me in 3 strides, his hands gripping my shoulders. "Emma, listen to me. I have enemies. Serious enemies who would love nothing more than to hurt me through the people I—" He broke off, his jaw clenching. "Through you. Through Lily." The room tilted. "Lily? She's safe. I have 4 men at her school right now, and she's not going anywhere without a full security detail." His hands gentled on my shoulders, and I saw him visibly try to control his anger. "But you need to understand something. The moment you accepted my protection, you became a target. And I should have—" His voice cracked slightly. "I should have explained that. Should have prepared you." "Who?" I whispered. "Who's doing this? I don't know yet, but I will." The promise in his voice was dark, absolute. "And when I find them, they'll wish they'd never looked in your direction." He made me pack a bag, just essentials for me and Lily. Then Marcus drove us to a building downtown I'd never noticed before. One of those glass and steel towers that looked like every other glass and steel tower. But the penthouse apartment we entered through a private elevator was anything but ordinary. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Furniture that looked like art, security measures that Marcus explained in detail, reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, guards on every floor, cameras monitoring every entrance and exit. "This is where you'll stay," Dominic said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Until we neutralize the threat. For how long?" "As long as it takes." We picked up Lily from school, surrounded by so many men in suits that her teacher looked ready to call the police. She thought it was an adventure, chattering happily about her bodyguards, as if this were all a game. I held her hand so tightly my fingers went numb. That night, after Lily fell asleep in one of the penthouse's guest rooms, I found Dominic standing by the windows, staring out at the city lights, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. He turned, confusion in his eyes. "For what?" "For bringing danger into your life, for being—" "Don't." The word was sharp. He set down his glass and crossed to me. "Don't you dare apologize for being targeted by my enemies. This isn't your fault, Emma. It's mine. I'm the one who pulled you into this world without proper protection. I'm the one who was so focused on what I wanted that I didn't think about the consequences. You saved us," I said. "The house, the security, everything you've done isn't enough." His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "It will never be enough to make up for putting you in danger, but I swear to you, on everything I am, that I will keep you safe, you and Lily. No one will touch you while I'm breathing." The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, should have frightened me. Instead, it made something deep inside me crack open. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you ran toward the fire," he said simply. "Because you smiled at your daughter even when you were starving. Because you're everything good in a world that's mostly darkness. And because—" He paused, seemed to be struggling with himself. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Emma. Have been since the moment I opened my eyes in that burning car and saw you above me like some avenging angel." The words hung between us, impossible and terrifying, and everything I'd been afraid to hope for. "You can't," I said weakly. "You don't even know me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for your daughter. I know you eat ramen so she can have fruit. I know you're strong enough to survive in a city that eats people like you alive, and kind enough not to let it make you cruel." His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized I'd shed. "I know enough, Emma. More than enough. I can't be what you need. I'm just everything," he interrupted. "You're everything." Then he was kissing me again, and this time there was desperation in it. Need and fear, and something that felt like devotion. I kissed him back, pouring 3 weeks of confusion and want and terrified hope into it. And when we finally broke apart, we were both shaking. "Stay with me tonight," he said against my lips. We don't have to do anything. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me know you're safe." Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, that getting closer to this man, to this life, would only end in heartbreak or worse, but I was so tired of being rational. So tired of being alone. "Okay," I whispered. We lay together on his bed, a massive thing that could have fit my entire old apartment, and he wrapped his arms around me like I was something precious. His heart beat steady against my back. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt safe. "I won't let anything happen to you," he murmured into my hair. "I promise." And despite everything, despite all the very good reasons I had to doubt him, I believed it. I fell asleep in a killer's arms and dreamed of fire and salvation, of burning cars and dark eyes, and a future I couldn't quite see but desperately wanted to reach for. Outside the bulletproof windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and dangerous and full of secrets, just like the man who held me through the night. They found him 3 days later. I was in the penthouse kitchen making Lily breakfast when Dominic's phone rang. I watched his face change as he listened, watched the cold fury settle over his features like a mask, watched his free hand curl into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. "Understood," he said finally. "I'm on my way. Dominic. Marcus will stay with you." He was already moving, checking the weapon I'd pretended not to notice under his jacket. "Don't leave the penthouse. Don't open the door for anyone except my men. I'll be back soon." "Who was it?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. He paused at the door, his eyes meeting mine. In them, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Not anger, but the complete absence of mercy. "Someone who made a very poor choice," he said quietly. "Someone who's about to learn what happens when you threaten what's mine." Then he was gone, and I was left with my daughter and my fear and the knowledge that somewhere in this city, someone was about to die because they'd looked at me the wrong way. I should have been horrified, should have been disgusted with myself for being with a man who dealt in death so casually. Instead, I felt safe. Marcus wouldn't tell me anything, professional to the end. But I saw it in the way his shoulders relaxed as the hours passed, in the phone calls he took in rapid Italian, in the way he finally smiled at Lily when she showed him her drawings. When Dominic returned that evening, there was blood on his shirt cuff. He saw me notice it, saw me see it, and something flickered across his face. Shame, maybe, or fear that this would be the thing that finally made me run. But I'd run toward fire once before. What was a little blood compared to that? "Is it over?" I asked quietly, while Lily played in the other room. "It's over." He moved to the bar, poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, downed it in one swallow. "It was the Kozlov family. They thought if they couldn't eliminate me, they could control me through you. Make me weak. And now? Now they understand that threatening you doesn't make me weak." His eyes met mine, dark and dangerous. "It makes me absolutely ruthless." I should have asked what he'd done, should have demanded details, consequences, proof that justice had been served rather than just vengeance. But I didn't want to know, didn't want to think about what those hands had done just hours after they'd held me gently through the night. "So we can go home?" I asked instead. Back to the house? Something in his expression shifted. About that. He set down his glass, moved closer. I've been thinking. That house isn't safe enough. Not anymore. Not after this. My heart sank. So where? Here. The word fell between us like a stone. I want you here. Both of you. Permanently. I stared at him. You want us to move in with you. I want you where I can protect you properly. Where I know every entrance and exit, where my security is already established. Where no one can get to you without going through me first. He took my hands, his grip gentle despite the intensity in his voice. I want to wake up knowing you're safe. I want Lily to have everything she needs. I want... He broke off, something vulnerable flashing across his face. I want a family, Emma, the thing I never thought I could have. The thing my world doesn't allow. Your world, I repeated. The world where people die for looking at the wrong person, where enemies become bodies and threats are eliminated with bullets. That world? Yes. He didn't flinch from it, didn't try to pretty it up. I won't lie to you about what I am or what I do. But I will promise you this, that darkness will never touch you or Lily. You'll have everything you need, everything you want. Safety, security, a future. And what do you get? His hands tightened on mine. You. Your smile when I come home, Lily's laughter. The chance to be something other than what my father's legacy made me, the possibility of redemption. I can't redeem you, Dominic. Maybe not. But you make me want to try. I looked at this man. This beautiful, damaged, dangerous man who'd given me everything and asked for so little in return. This man who killed without hesitation, but held me like I was made of glass. This man who'd built an empire on blood and violence but wanted to give my daughter a yard to play in. What about Lily? I asked quietly. Growing up in this world, knowing what you do. She'll never know, he said firmly. My business stays separate, always. To her, I'll just be... He paused, and I saw the hope and fear warring in his eyes. I'll be whatever you let me be to her. The implications of that hung in the air between us. You want to be her father, I whispered. I want the chance to try. His voice had gone rough. I want to teach her to ride a bike. I want to scare away her first boyfriend. I want to walk her down the aisle someday if she'll let me. I want... He stopped, swallowed hard. I want to give her everything my father never gave me. Love without conditions, safety without price, a childhood that doesn't end in blood. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't try to stop them. This is crazy. I know. We barely know each other. I know. You're a criminal, a killer. Everything I should run from, I know. His hands came up to frame my face, his thumbs brushing away my tears. But you're not running, Emma. You're standing here crying and you're not running. He was right. God help me, he was right. If I say yes, I said slowly, if we do this, there are rules. Anything. Lily comes first. Always. If your world ever threatens her, we leave. No arguments, no negotiations, we disappear. Agreed. And you... I took a shaky breath. You don't lie to me. Ever. I'd rather have an ugly truth than a pretty lie. I can do that. And no business in the house. No weapons where she can find them. No deals. Nothing that puts that darkness near her. Done. He was smiling now. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Anything else? I thought about it. Thought about this impossible situation and this dangerous man and the future I was agreeing to. Love us, I said finally. Not just me. Both of us. Completely. Because if you can't, if this is just some fantasy that'll fade, it won't. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and full of promises I desperately wanted to believe. I'm not Ryan Foster. I don't run when things get hard. I don't abandon what's mine. And you, Emma, you and Lily are mine now, for as long as you'll have me. That's a long time, I warned. Good, he kissed me again. Because forever sounds just about right. We moved into the penthouse the following week. Lily adapted with the resilience of childhood, delighted by her new room with its view of the city, by the building's pool and gym, by Dominic himself, who surprised me by being gentle and patient with her in a way I'd never expected from a man who ruled an empire. He taught her to play chess, read her bedtime stories with different voices for each character, let her paint his nails bright pink, and wore them to a business meeting without complaint. Slowly, carefully, he won her heart the same way he'd won mine. Not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent acts of love. 6 months later, when she started calling him Daddy Dom, I saw him leave the room and heard him crying in the bathroom. When he emerged, his eyes were red, but his smile was real. "I never thought," he started, then stopped, shook his head. "Thank you for letting me be this. You earned it," I said simply. And he had. The city learned quickly not to threaten Dominic Salvatore's family. Word spread through the underground. The waitress and her daughter were untouchable, protected by a man who'd proven he'd burn the world down to keep them safe. We lived in a bubble of security and carefully maintained normalcy, where Lily went to the best schools and I finally went back to college, where Dominic came home every night and left his darkness at the door. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days, arguments about his business, nights when I woke up terrified that someone would take this all away. But there were more good days than bad, more laughter than tears, more love than fear. A year after we moved in, Dominic asked me to marry him. He didn't do it with a grand gesture or a public proposal. Instead, he waited until Lily was asleep, until we were alone on the terrace overlooking the city, and simply held out a ring. "I know I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "I know my world is dangerous and my past is dark and I have no right to ask this. But you make me want to be better, Emma. You and Lily. You're my redemption, my second chance, my everything." He took a shaky breath. "Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, providing for you, loving you. Let me be the man you see when you look at me, instead of the man I was before you ran into that fire." I took the ring, a simple band with a single diamond that caught the light like a captured star. "Yes," I said, and watched his whole face transform with joy. "Yes, you ridiculous, dangerous, wonderful man. Yes." We married quietly 6 months later, just us and Lily and Marcus as witness. Nothing fancy, nothing public, just promises made and kept, just love acknowledged and celebrated. Dominic Salvatore, the city's most feared crime lord, cried when I walked down the aisle. And I cried when he said his vows, when he promised to love and protect and cherish, when he slipped a ring on my finger that felt less like jewelry and more like a key, unlocking a future I'd stopped believing I could have. That night, after the celebration and the cake and tucking an exhausted Lily into bed, we stood together on the terrace again. The city sprawled below us, glittering and dangerous and full of secrets. But up here, in our fortress of glass and steel, we were safe. "No regrets?" Dominic asked, his arms around me, his chin resting on my head. I thought about that night in the diner, about the burning car and the choice I'd made to run toward danger instead of away. About everything that choice had led to, the fear and the love, the danger and the safety, the man who'd given me the world because I'd given him his life. "Not one," I said. And I meant it. Epilogue 5 years later, the city had changed. Oh, not the obvious things. It was still dangerous, still full of shadows and secrets. But something had shifted in the underground. The Salvatore family, under Dominic's leadership, had become known for something unexpected: protection. Not just of their own interests, but of the neighborhood. The diner where I'd worked, Rosie's Place, was still standing, thriving even, because no one dared threaten it. The families on my old street found their rent controlled, their landlords suddenly reasonable. Crime in certain areas dropped mysteriously, as if an invisible hand were guiding things toward something better. "You're going soft," I teased Dominic one night, reading about another community program his legitimate businesses had funded. "I'm being strategic," he countered, but his smile gave him away. "A stable neighborhood is a profitable neighborhood." "You're being good," I corrected. "Admit it." He pulled me close, his eyes warm. "I'm being what you made me, Someone who remembers what it's like to be saved. Lily was 8 now, bright and happy, and blissfully unaware that her stepfather was anything other than a successful businessman. She had friends, hobbies, a future that stretched out bright and unbounded. And she had a little brother, Dominic Jr., 2 years old and already showing signs of his father's stubborn determination. Sometimes, when I watched Dominic with our children, I thought about that night in the diner, about the choice I'd made to run toward the flames instead of away, about how one moment of courage had changed everything, not just for me, but for him, for Lily, for an entire city that had learned that even monsters could be redeemed by love. We weren't perfect. We'd never be normal, but we were happy, and we were together, and we were safe. And sometimes, late at night when the city slept below us, Dominic would hold me close and whisper the same words he'd said that first night. "You saved my life, Emma." And I would whisper back the truth I'd learned in the years since. No, we saved each other. Because that's what love was in the end. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but two broken people choosing to run toward each other instead of away, choosing to build something beautiful in the darkness, choosing to believe that redemption was possible, even for those who'd walked too long in shadows. The city glittered below us, dangerous, beautiful, full of secrets. But up here, in our fortress of glass and steel, we'd built something stronger than any empire. We'd built a home, and that was worth more than all the power in the world.